Some episodes of The Twilight Zone were meant to entertain. Some leaned into fantasy, stories you could just enjoy and then move on. But every once in a while, there was an episode that felt a little bit different. One that didn't just tell a story, but held up a mirror. And what it reflected wasn't always pretty. In this video, we're going back to one of those episodes. A story set in a quiet neighborhood, in a simpler time. Or at least that's how it looks on the surface. Because the truth is, this one feels even more familiar today than when it first aired. And it all begins on Maple Street. Fantasy, sci-fi, horror, Rerun Zone. The story begins like any other day. A quiet neighborhood, tree-lined streets, kids playing, neighbors talking, the kind of place where nothing much ever seems to happen. And that's exactly what makes what comes next feel just a little bit off. There's no warning or dramatic build-up, just a sudden flash of light overhead. What looks like a meteor, but with an unusual pulsing sound, and no explosion as it hits the earth. The power goes out. The phones won't work. Cars won't start. At first, it's easy to just laugh it off. It's probably just a power outage. Probably something simple. Probably something explainable. Just a simple power failure. But then, a little boy says something. Just a small idea at first. A passing thought. What if it's not an accident? And that's all it takes. From that moment on, the question isn't what's happening out there, it's what's happening right here between people who thought they knew each other. The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street first aired in 1960. It was a time when fear was real. It was something people lived with every day. The Cold War was here, and it was in full swing. Not long before that, neighbors were being asked to look at each other with suspicion, to question who they could trust. And who they couldn't. Rod Serling understood that, and he had a way of taking what was happening in the real world and putting it into these classic half-hour stories. Not preaching, but just making you think. In this case, he didn't need aliens or monsters. He just needed a street and some ordinary people. Oh, and one small idea.
You know, really, this is for laughs. You know what I'm guilty of? I'm guilty of insomnia.
At first, it's just talk. Neighbors gather in the street trying to make sense of some strange things, sharing ideas the way people do when something doesn't quite add up. And for a moment, it still feels pretty normal. But then, the conversation starts to shift. Someone remembers a detail, something small, something that didn't seem important at the time. A neighbor who goes out at night looking at the stars. Lights that go on and off for no reason. A car starts and stops by itself. Nothing that proves anything, but just enough to make people stop and think. And once that seed is planted, it doesn't take long. Now everyone is looking at each other a little bit differently. Not as neighbors, but as possibilities. Voices get a little louder. Conversations are a little sharper. Fingers start getting pointed. People who've known each other for years start questioning things they never questioned before. And it doesn't take long. In fact, it's amazing how quickly the fear spreads. No evidence, no real reason, just a suggestion that maybe the danger isn't out there somewhere. Maybe it's right here on Maple Street. And the frightening thing is, from that moment on, it's not about finding out the truth, it's about choosing sides.
You're gonna talk us right into a grave. You let whatever's out there walk right over us, wouldn't you? Well, some of us won't.
Then, something changes. It's not just talk anymore, it's action. Because fear, when it sits too long, starts looking for somewhere to go. And on Maple Street, it finds a target. A light flickers on in one house when no other house has power. Suddenly, that's enough. No questions are asked, There's no waiting around, just a shift in the crowd. Eyes turn and voices rise, and the same people who were standing together just moments ago start accusing each other. Not physically at first, but in the way they look at each other, and the way that they speak. Now, it isn't about what might be happening, it's about who they think is responsible for what's happening. Once a name is spoken out loud, everything changes. The tone hardens, and whatever doubt there was turns into certainty, and something else starts to creep in now. Something quieter but far more dangerous. The need to be right. Because if you're not the one being accused, then maybe you're safe. Maybe pointing the finger keeps it from being pointed back at you. That's where they start to cross the line. Not suddenly, but in tiny steps that feel justified in the moment. A raised voice, a harsh word, a push that goes a little too far. Then, a shotgun comes out, and the inevitable happens. Then suddenly, the neighborhood that once felt so ordinary is gone. It's replaced by something unrecognizable. Not because of what's out there, but because of what's been allowed to grow right here. And just when it feels like things couldn't possibly get any worse, the truth reveals itself. It's a Twilight Zone twist that's one of the best. Quietly, from a distance, the real culprits are revealed, and they were never part of Maple Street at all. They were just observing, watching from a distance, studying everything that had just happened on Maple Street, studying human nature in action. But they weren't hiding in the neighborhood. They weren't trying to blend in. They didn't need to. All they had to do was turn off the power and let human nature take over. There was no invasion or alien attack, just a simple understanding that the easiest way to break a society is to let it turn on itself. The story is timeless. That's why the episode still stands out. Not because it showed us something new, but because it showed us something we've always been capable of. And that's what makes this one so hard to forget. Because sometimes, the scariest stories aren't fiction at all. The real question Rod Serling asked here was never who the monsters were on Maple Street. The real question was how easily ordinary people can become the monsters. Till next time, this is Rich from Rerun Zone. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.
They pick the most dangerous enemy they can find, and it's themselves. All we need to do is sit back and watch.